Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. Being a mom is one of the most rewarding experiences a woman can have, but motherhood also has its share of challenges physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. Even if a woman has read all the parenting books and received sage advice from other moms, until she becomes a mom, she won't truly understand the responsibility and challenges that come with the title. For the overwhelmed mamas who think they'll never live up to the super moms around them, our next guests want to offer encouragement and assurance that they are not alone. Suzanne Gosselin is a regular writer and editor for Focus on the Family and David C. Cook, and previously served as an editor for Clubhouse and Clubhouse Junior. She's written books for Zondervan, Harvest House, and Tyndale, and is the author of Expectant Parents, Preparing Together for the Journey of Parenthood. She lives in Bakersfield, California with her husband Kevin and 4 children. They enjoy escaping to the ocean. You can learn more about Suzanne Gosselin at www.suzannegosselin.com. Her co-author is Gretta Kennedy, a speaker, mentor, and writer with a degree in women's ministry from Multnomah University and over 20 years of ministry experience. She passionately supports her husband, Jay, and his full-time camp ministry. They're raising 3 children on Vancouver Island and report their adventures on their travel blog, Traveling Islanders. You can learn more about Gretta at GrettaKennedy.com. Joining us now are Suzanne Gosselin and Gretta Kennedy, co-authors of Grit and Grace, Devotions for Warrior Moms. Suzanne and Gretta, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So great to see you. So let's start with Suzanne. Suzanne, this was a devotional, Grit and Grace, Devotions for Warrior Moms. We know the two of you both have raised children, you travel, you have ministry experience, but what was the example in your life? Who was really the key influencers in your journey to faith, and what was that like for you when you came to your ownership of your own faith, and how that impacted your life?
Well, I accepted Christ at a fairly young age, and I was about 4 years old, and it was largely due to the fact that my parents were Christians. They were faithful in teaching me about Jesus, about the gospel. They had me involved in a Good News Club, which is like an evangelistic Bible club. And I remember the moment that it happened, I had lied, and my mom had sent me outside to think about what I'd done, and it just all clicked because I had the facts there in my mind already that Jesus had died on the cross, that I was a sinner. And I asked him right then. I was sitting on the swing set outside, and I asked him to be my savior. And then I went inside, and I forget if I told my mom right then or that night. But she laughs about it now, because she said, I had these dreams that I would be the one leading you to Christ, as you were going to bed at night, and here you just went ahead and did it on your own. But definitely my parents were a huge influence in my life, and my own mother, I think, did a great job. She wasn't perfect. No mother is, but she definitely loved the Lord, and she often would admit when she was making mistakes and that she needed Jesus too. And so that made a huge impact on me.
So was there a dad in the picture?
Oh yeah, my dad, they live in Olympia, Washington now. And another thing was that I think was a strength of our family was that we did a lot of ministry together. So my dad plays the guitar, and me and my 3 younger siblings all started singing at a young age, and they called us the Von Trapp family at our church. So he would play the guitar, and we'd sing together, and we'd kind of offer those talents wherever we could at church. We would do children's church together as a family, and I just saw my parents step up time and time again to serve in the church and to bless other people, and I was watching all that time, so that's definitely influenced how I parent as well.
All right, and Gretta, you've known Suzanne's story, but hearing it now, making you think about your own journey, what was your journey like in the early years?
Actually, fairly similar to Suzanne's. My father's a pastor, So that part's different. But God, God was taught from the time I came out. And so I always had a very good foundation of who God is, Jesus Christ, my need for him. My coming to Jesus was a little different, of course, in that my brothers led me to the Lord. It was a sweet night where I was scared. My parents were out, and we had a babysitter, but I ran down to my brother's room and I asked if I could sleep on their floor. And I told them that it was because I was scared, and they said, sure, I could sleep on their floor, but they weren't scared because they had Jesus. And so right there that night, my brothers, I said, well, I want Jesus because I don't want to be scared. And so that was my beginning. And then, of course, being a ministry family, we were very involved in the church, and understanding that this journey with God is not just for us to keep. And so we share our gifts and our talents. So I was very involved in youth group growing up, and also sang in the church and helped lead worship in our youth band. But I went to public school, and it was hard sometimes to stand out and be different from all the other kids. But my friends, they all knew who I was, and they knew that I wouldn't be going to the parties and all of that because I was different. And then just made the decision where Suzanne and I met. I went to Multnomah University, where we were paired as roommates, and then that's how we met.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you stayed as roommates all 4 years?
Yes.
Well, that's the fun bit. That is definitely an act of God. Yes, we did. But our first year was a bit rocky. I wanted to have so much fun in college. I knew I would get a good education. That was a given. But I also knew that college only happens in this very small window of time, and I wanted to have a lot of fun. So I did. And Suzanne is very studious and wanted to be sure that she kept her academic scholarship. And so we did not see eye to eye often in our room. And I couldn't figure out how we were paired together. We were so very different. And it pretty much an act of God, how by the end of that, we ended up rooming again, and then we kind of figured each other out and became good friends, and roomed all 4 years together.
So here you are, you spend 4 years together as roommates. Suzanne, you're driven by excellence in academia. Gretta is motivated by, don't worry, be happy.
Social.
Right. You're looking at the gospel, and she's looking at the Bobby McFerrin gospel, and don't worry, be happy. Everything's going to be all right. And so you worked through that, and would you say you became best friends?
Well, it was such a neat journey because by the end of our first semester at college, as Gretta said, we hadn't really hit it off. We had different priorities at school, and our personalities were very different. And then we kind of had a bonding moment at Christmas time. I realized I really had very few friends at college, and she was going out for a Christmas party at the local diner with her friends, and she kind of last minute said, "Do you want to come with us?" And it was just such an amazing thing that God did. That night after the party, which was lovely, we stayed up like almost all night talking and really hearing each other's stories. And the next semester went a lot more smoothly. I still thought, we'll probably part ways at the end of our freshman year. But to my shock, Gretta asked if I wanted to room with her our sophomore year, and it turned out she was going to be an RA, and she needed another, person by her side who wasn't going to be an RA, and that was me. And after that, we were fast friends. We came to really appreciate one another's differences.
So here you both live pretty far apart. Tell me about your journeys when you both became pregnant. Was it similar times? Were they? Was this something that you kind of navigated the road together, or was this a independent journey and then something brought you back together, which is the book?
Go ahead, Greta.
Okay, so I was married at 25 and lived in Oregon at the time. And my husband and I had our first child right after our second anniversary. And then very shortly after, had our second child, and followed up by our third in just under 3 years. We had our 3 kids. And in that time, Suzanne was still single. She was not married yet. Mm-hmm. So we were actually in each other's weddings. We played roles in each other's weddings. But during this whole time, we lived very far away from each other. And our connection to each other really was kind of on an annual basis. We would just do a check-in phone call, or maybe even a big, long update email. But our friendship has never really been every day we got to talk, and or even every month. But every time we talk to each other, it's always been, we go to a depth of soul connection with one another right away. And then when my youngest was, I think, 7 months old, Suzanne got married. And so just that baby and I flew out to Colorado, and we're at her wedding. And then Suzanne started having kids right away. So my kids are just a season older than her children are. Currently, my kids are 13. Well, she's 13 on Saturday. She's very excited. 13, 11, and 10. And Suzanne's are 8 and
8, 6, 4, and 2.
There you go. So we did get to share pregnancy journey together, childbirth journey together. But our hearts are still very, very much connected. And so our approach in the book is from 2 slightly different seasons of motherhood. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you bring that, so you really cover from 2 to preteen, a pretty good swath in there of developmental years for children, but an incredibly challenging season for mothers.
Yes, it definitely is. When we came to the idea to write the book, I was in that season. I had 3 children who were 5, 3, and 1.5. And I was having the yearly catch-up phone conversation with Greta, and she said that she had been feeling a calling to write. And I said, well, what do you want to write? And she said, I feel like I'm supposed to encourage mothers of young children. So even though Greta's a season ahead, she had it on her heart to encourage the women who were just in that season she'd just come out of, and to give them hope that they could make it too. And so it was really exciting when we discovered that we had a similar idea, but it comes from 2 different perspectives. It comes from, I'm doing this right now. This story happened yesterday. And then from, this happened a few years ago, and here's looking back on it, what God taught me through it. So it's kind of a neat combination.
Now, Greta, you're now a steady Eddie mom, faithful, not looking for that good time, and Suzanne is just the same, in the same groove of wanting to parent well and do all those things. Did you find that the personalities hadn't really changed much, and your approach to parenting was just a little bit different? One wanted to be more checkbox oriented, the other wanted to be more spirit led, and kind of the parental dance with each child was completely different. What did you see in your nature, in your own personalities, which started out as being a point of not friction, but you just weren't on the same page at the same time? Did you find yourselves circling back to some of that dynamic, or did you find that you had both kind of arrived in a similar place in a similar time?
That's an excellent question there. In that, I think as people, we are constantly changing and growing. So, yes, I think I have toned down a bit from my college days and needing to be loud, center of the tension, and that sort of thing. But I think still that's very much a part of me. This fun-loving, free flow type, and that comes out in my parenting. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of chaos in my home when the children were younger, and it was chaos that I looked at and I said, well, we're having fun. And so for me, I was willing to put up with some things because it was fun in the midst of this is really hard. But I do think I've kind of settled a little, and so that's interesting. And I've learned that checking boxes is not necessarily a bad thing. There is great value in being able to have a form and a structure to the day, but yeah, so I know I personally have changed quite a bit since those college years. Suzanne probably as well, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think one of the great things about the Grit and Great devotional Grit and Grace is that we do reach a wider swath of moms, not only because our children are different ages, but because of our very different personalities. And in the book, there's actually 2 back-to-back devotions, one about how I hated camping with my children and I almost had a nervous breakdown. And next comes Gretta's, how she loved camping with her children and it was like the greatest time of her life. So I think it's kind of neat how whatever mom is reading this, she's probably going to relate more to one or the other of us, but that's kind of how it's intended.
So you found a way which in marriage, relationships, you found a way to mesh and where it's like cogs of a wheel, of a gear, is to find where you fit together so that it can function, but many times the gears could be going in opposite directions, which is what keeps the clockwork going. And other ones, they're going in the same direction, which keeps a forward motion. There's different form and function. If your watch had all the gears going the same direction, it would be crawling off your arm. It would have life to it. So, there's just different ways that you find this balance. So, in the collaboration part of the devotional, how much collaboration was there? Did you find yourself talking daily, weekly? Did you find yourself more email oriented? What was the collaborative model that you used?
Well, we are busy moms, so really busy moms. So when we found out we were writing the book, we had, of course, already written a few devotions, so we knew kind of the style of the other author. And we basically, from January to May, which was our period of writing, just said, hey, let's just each individually write our half of the devotional book, and we'll keep an index of verses so that we don't duplicate which scripture passages we're using for the devotions. But other than that, let's make it a little more spirit-led and just write about kind of what's on our hearts. And it was phenomenal because only one time did Gretta look at that document and a verse was used that she wanted to use. Other than that, we just independently selected completely different verses. And yet when our devotions came back together, our editor said, it seems like you guys talked about this because they flow so perfectly together and the themes are so interrelated and interconnected without repeating one another. So we really give the credit to the Lord for writing that devotional through us and allowing that to happen, knowing our limitations that we simply didn't have the time to talk every day.
Gretta, what's your expectation of how long a mom who is struggling can spend in a daily devotion?
Oh, That is so hard because I think the desire for that mom, I know for me it was definitely, man, I just want to dig into the word and have God speak to me and have it come alive and cross-reference and journal and have this beautiful 20 minutes to an hour-long time with the Lord. The reality is, if a mom has 20 minutes, she has probably fallen asleep. Because there's so many very immediate needs constantly pulling at that mom. And I remember being so frustrated that I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. I couldn't sit down and have a hot cup of coffee. I have learned to have a very cold cup of coffee. That's just the way it is. So I think part of it is understanding that this season is so different from any other season in a woman's life, this time where the children are tiny. So I realized that the mom brain is a very, very real thing. It's cobwebby up there. Having a flow of conversation is very difficult. Remembering all of the things that are going on in there is hard. So having something that, I'm going to say, 5 to 10 minutes is about what a mom has, and sometimes not even that much. So in writing this, that was one of our very clear goals, was to make sure that it was short, but it still got into God's word and gave truth and encouragement and hope, and sometimes a hit over the head. And all in 5 to 10 minute reads.
You know, it's interesting. I've interviewed quite a few authors of devotions for moms, for women, for people recovering from this or dealing with that, or miscarriages, or various different areas. And it hadn't really occurred to me until just now in talking with both of you. Here you have a mom that has her own devotion. Does her husband have his own devotion, and then they have one devotional that they do together? Do I need to allocate in my life as a mom also time with my husband so that my marriage is not being compromised by the fact that I'm being spiritually fed because I have my devotional grit and grace? Is there, if I'm equipping and I'm dealing with and I'm in the Word and I'm in the devotion, am I more or less likely to set aside even more time to do a devotional with my spouse? And is this provoking to the spouse that he should go out and pursue a devotional for fathers or a devotional for men?
Yeah, I think my husband is a pastor, and he, of course, read the devotions as I was writing them, and he kept saying, oh man, these are good for dads too. Like, this may be a devotional for moms, but just the truths in there about parenting are good for dads too. And he said, I wouldn't be surprised if the women who get this devotional won't be like, hey, hon, you need to read this because this is so good today. And this really relates to something we've been going through. So that's definitely one of our hopes, is that it would be something that women could share with their spouse. And who knows, maybe there will be a Grit and Grace Dad sequel at some point if we can get our husbands on board to do something like that. But I think that any work that an individual puts into connecting with the Lord and seeking him spiritually, that can only benefit the marriage. I think it's great if couples can do devotions together on top of these little 5-minute devotions that we're offering. We realize this is kind of a just, if you can only do one thing, maybe read this devotion, but hopefully it will inspire women to connect more with their spouses in this journey of parenting.
We're talking with Suzanne Hadley Gosselin and Gretta Kennedy, co-authors of Grit and Grace, Devotion for Warrior Moms, 90 daily devotions, which they say 5 to 10 minutes each out of your busy day to keep you on track, because you aren't superhuman, but God does have a word for you in the season that you're in. And this is a long season of infant all the way through preteen that they're addressing in this devotional. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Suzanne and with Gretta about some of the devotions, what the thought process was, what some of the really favorite ones are, some of the keynote ones in their mind that ministered so much to them, and then what ministered to each other as they were developing this. We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Suzanne Gosselin and Gretta Kennedy, co-authors of the devotions for Warrior Moms entitled Grit and Grace. Suzanne and Gretta, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
So as you were collaborating on this, and you talked about, and as you look in the devotions themselves, it tells you who the author is, whether it's Gretta or Suzanne. In writing this, did you find that you like certain ones better than others? They became your favorite. Did you find that your favorite ones were written by the other person?
Well, as we were writing, we did our work pretty independently. So the first time that I really had a chance to read Gretta's devotions was when I was compiling them. And I had seen already a couple samples and I knew they would be great. Gretta she has so much wisdom, and she is a teacher and she understands. And so I had already, just the 2 devos I had read of Gretta's, I had been incredibly blessed, and they'd given me so many things to think about. So I knew she would do great. I think as I was writing the ones of my devotions that touched me the most were the ones that really addressed deep heart issues I was experiencing at the time, and kind of working that out. I'm sure you've heard it said that writing is like therapy, because you have a chance to address some of the emotions and things that are going on in your life. So in this format of telling our stories as moms, both the successes and the victories, that happened quite a bit. So it was a really encouraging and uplifting time for me to work through some things as a mom of young children, and then invite others into that through writing the devotions.
Gretta, when you were looking at the devotions that Suzanne wrote, were there some times where you say, "Yep, I can see her going through this. Yep, based on what I know, that this is something that, yeah, I can see why she's struggling with this, or I can see why she might be, or I didn't realize that I'm past that particular challenge with my children, but I had it, and this is what I used to approach that season." How relatable were the devotions that she put together to you?
Oh my goodness. I still cry when I read hers. Incredibly relatable. I think though her stories are different, because all of us go through different things, the core of some of the emotion that happens, or the hard that it is, or the pure elation, is incredibly relatable. Suzanne is a very gifted writer, and she is so good at taking a situation, pointing it right to God's truth, and she is insanely encouraging. Suzanne's has some of her experiences are very different, simply because she has a child with special needs, and so that brings some experiences I cannot. I don't understand them to the depth that she does, because I haven't had to walk that road. But the way she takes the experience of what she's gone through with that particular child, and then the things that God is teaching her through it, completely speaks to me. And in fact, one night I was like, I haven't read some of these for a while. So I picked up the book, and I was a blubbering mess. And I told my husband, I said, this is awful, but it's so wonderful. So even the fact that we even wrote these, and they still speak to us. There was one I read that I had just had a particularly defeating day with one of my children, and I felt like, wow, I'm really messing up as a mom. And I picked up my book and I read it, and God's truth still continues. It's true. Whether this was I related it to an experience 5 years ago, or whether it still affects me right now today, it is so true. And I got to tell you, we're a bit raw in this book. We don't try and put up a front of making us look good. I mean, really, we don't look good in this book, because we tell our junk of our defeats as moms and our failures. But we also bring it back to God, and what does God say about us in that moment? And that God does not wants us walking around defeated, that he is our helper in those times, and that his mercies are new every single morning. Oh, praise Jesus, great is your faithfulness. That tomorrow's a new day, and let's pick up your pants and start again. And so yes, Suzanne's are very relatable, and still minister very much to me. And do I have a favorite devotion? That's an unfair question. Do I have a favorite child? They are all so personal, and they touch different parts of my heart and my head. There's some that stand out for sure in different moments of life, but it's really hard to pick a favorite. Yeah.
Did I see that the name Rhonda Stoppe somewhere associated with the two of you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I met Rhonda because my husband and I appeared in her real life romance book.
Yes.
And that's how I initially met her. And from the start, she's been super encouraging of this project and said, hey, I'd love to write you a recommendation. I think she was the first person who said that. And so she's been definitely a cheerleader for Grit and Grace, and wanted to give it to her daughter and everything. So she's wonderful.
Well, she's a featured guest on our program. She appears with me once a month, 1 hour a month.
Oh, awesome.
She's the host of the No Regrets Hour here on our network. So Rhonda is a very special, very close friend. Steve as well. Wonderful, wonderful people. And in your part of the world, of course, out there in California. When I looked at the titles of these, each one of the chapters in the book, I began to realize that there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of challenges for people who feel like they have it together, and they face that situation that they're totally unexpected, unprepared, and really think that they're unable, ill-equipped to deal with it. Did you find yourself writing from a standpoint of searching for strength in brokenness, or just the realities of parenting that nobody prepared you for? Nobody, you know, does everybody have to go through this on their own? Does everybody have to have the same experience? You know, I have a daughter, 17, she's 17 weeks pregnant. This is our first grandchild. She'll be 30 a couple of weeks before her first child is born. And she said to me all her life, Dad, you grew up in the 50s and 60s. You experienced life on your own. You were you're first generation American. You came from you know, Eastern European family. So you had to learn everything, and so you have to let me do that. It has to be. And I said, but you learn wisdom as good judgment is learned through other people's bad experiences, and so the more you harvest, the less you really have to go through. And she's now in this stage of life saying, hey, I get it. I don't have to run into a wall to experience a broken nose. I know that if you run head on a wall, so we've gone out of that season. But do you find that a lot of moms feel like they have to face these uncharted waters in their life, as if they're navigating something that no one else has ever navigated? Because in that moment it's emotional, in that moment it's a weakness, a questioning, and that this is a common struggle, it's a common challenge, and there are tools out there and resources like this that you are offering the helping hand to the struggling mom.
Yeah, absolutely. That has been my experience. I talk about how I had high expectations for myself going into motherhood. I had done a lot of babysitting. I'd worked with children. I loved kids, and I kind of had an idea of the kind of mom that I would be. So it was a little bit of a rude awakening when I realized I wasn't as good at it as I thought that I would be. And as I got more and more run down, just having young children and how demanding life was, and you don't get to sleep as much, and there's just a lot of things going on, the more worn down I got, the worse I felt about myself. And the less I was drawing on the Lord because I was a busy mom. So I was realizing days would go by where I hadn't really had a great time with the Lord because I was busy, and that was feeding me being impatient with my children, or being envious of what I saw other moms doing, or feeling bad about myself. Things that we know from Scripture are not the birthright of a child of God. And so it was out of that place that the idea for this book came, that we need grace. That's the grace part of Grit and Grace, is that God offers us grace. And there was a point where even the verse that says, "Come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest," that Jesus said, I wondered if that applied to me as a mom of young children. I'm like, how can I possibly have rest right now? So it was also reclaiming the promises that are in the Word, which is a very central theme of our book, is looking at those promises of God and how they relate to women in this season, and how we can reclaim them for our own benefit, but ultimately for the benefit of our children and the world. Now that's a tall order.
Yeah, well, that is. Now, Greta, you know, when I look at the titles, I can almost guess at which ones you authored just by the subject matter.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting that just spending 45 minutes with you and hearing about your personality and those kind of things, and the fact that you do write a traveler's kind of blog and about your journeys. To me, camping is a hotel without room service. Okay.
Oh, it's so much more. It is so much more.
Okay. So, you know, let's talk about the camping, because you did refer early on to this being a back-to-back one where you both wrote about unique experiences that are both equally relatable. So, Greta, what was your devotion for that particular one that wound up being back-to-back with Suzanne's?
I think for me, camping is so delightful because all of the stuff disappears, and you just go back to simplicity. I love my kids exploring in the dirt and being a messy mess. I love that. I love the simple pleasures of taking rocks and throwing them into the water and watching what happens with the ripples. And I love the ease to me of teaching about God's greatness when I'm camping. Being surrounded by nature, cooking our own food, slowing down. To me, that is absolute bliss. Yes, we're dirty. I may not shower for a lot of days, but usually when I camp, I'm by the ocean, a river, or a lake. So, hey, you know, I can rinse off. But I love just what the slow down does. No electronics, just us. I often say to my husband, and in this, you got to understand, I love camping so much. My husband and I took our 3-year-old, our almost 2-year-old, and our 7-8-month-old. We left right after Suzanne got married. We flew to Hawaii with all of our camping gear, and we camped on the beach for a month. So that is the extent of love that we have for camping. But I said to my husband, as we're in the tent, I said, look in this tent. We have everything we need. And we are so often surrounded in life by, you need more. You need more comfort. You need more food. You need more visual stimulation by screens, or entertain me. And when I'm camping, that just disappears, and we just have each other and what God made. And that to me, I just, even right now, I'm like, I gotta get in a tent. I just genuinely love how God speaks to me when I'm camping.
And Suzanne?
Yeah, so my devotion on camping was basically, this was one of like the most humbling, worst points of my motherhood to date, was when my husband and I decided, as our first camping trip as a couple, we've been married almost 10 years now, that we would go camping with our children when they were 6, 4, 3, and 6 months. So it was crazy, and we were tent camping, and I almost had a nervous breakdown. And so everything that Greta is saying about camping, that is not me whatsoever, as far as the enjoyment of that. And yet God taught me some significant things through that. It was a church camping trip. So many kind people jumped in to help us survive. The kids had a blast. They loved camping. They're going to have amazing memories of that camping trip. And just to see their discovery, there were high moments, which that is just a picture of motherhood in general. Even in the midst of the struggle, there are these moments of beauty and grace and tenderness, and you don't want to miss those because you're having a hard day or a hard week or a hard month.
So your devotions are real, raw, honest, humorous, and yet they are encouraging. So your intent was to reach out to those that say, listen, there's probably nothing that you've experienced that between the two of us, with the, 7 children between the two of you?
Yes.
Okay, 7 children that we have not experienced with one child, another child, or all children, and the same fears and doubts about our parenting ability, our parenting skills, and our ability to balance and juggle, which is the plate spinning act, which looks great until they stop.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's really an exciting act until they stop, and then all the plates come crashing down. So what is it you want people to take away from this? Each one of you had a unique vision, individual vision, that turned into the collective vision for this. So Greta, what was your vision for this? And then Suzanne, what was yours?
My vision, there's a few pieces, but one of them is for the mom to know she's not alone. I think we often, as moms, look around and think the other moms have it. They've figured it out, and I haven't. And there's so much danger in comparison, and women really struggle with comparison, and thinking that another mom, another woman is prettier, has better behaved kids, is more relaxed or more structured, whatever it is. And by comparison, by doing that, she alienates herself and says, I'm not good enough, I'll never measure up, and all of the negative talk that happens. And the reality is that mom is never, ever alone. God is with her. He's called her to motherhood. He empowers her. He strengthens her moment by moment. And there were so many times that I would have on repeat the music in my home was the same song over and over. I need thee every hour, most precious Lord, because I needed to be reminded that God, you're actually in this room with me as I'm cleaning up the vomit, as I'm preparing another meal that they may or may not eat. You're right here with me. I'm not alone, and you've strengthened me and called me to this. So that for me was one of the main things I want the woman to know.
Okay. Let's give.
That's
okay. Thank you, Suzanne. We've got about a minute to wrap this up. So let me get your vision in the 1-minute clip.
Okay. So Yeah, the primary thing was the spiritual nourishment in this season. Like I described, how not connecting with the Lord was feeding these basically bad fruit in my life. So the purpose of the book is to give moms a succinct nugget of truth that she can absorb quickly and she can use that day. So that was the primary vision. And then self-acceptance as a mom, going along with what Greta said, that God has created you unique from every other person, and he knows the children that you have, and he put you together intentionally. And so embrace the kind of mom that you are and look to him to grow you into that kind of mother that he intends you to be.
Amen. We've been talking with Suzanne Gosselin and Gretta Kennedy, authors of Grit and Grace, Devotion for Warrior Moms. In this short hour, you've heard the wisdom of two who between the two of them are raising 7 very active and challenging children. And as they navigated motherhood, they found a way to share a word of encouragement, a word of the Lord, and to rest and trust in the promises of God. And they encourage each one of you, moms and dads, parents of children in age from infancy through preteen, in how to navigate this in 5 to 10-minute devotions that you two can do together. Wives, moms, you can do by yourself. This is for you to know that you are not alone. Not only are you not alone because the Lord is always with you, but you're not alone because there's others like Greta and Suzanne who have experienced and navigated this road that you are right on right now, facing this challenge with words of wisdom for you to hang on to that may just be that little bit of sugar, that little spike in your blood sugar level that gets you up and going when you feel defeated. You dust yourself off with the Word of God, and you dust yourself off with a devotion. And just a moment, 5 minutes with the Lord will fill your tank and get you going for another day. Suzanne Gosselin, Gretta Kennedy, authors of Grit and Grace, thank you for sharing your story with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you.
God bless you both. All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.